political paradigm. Now, politics in Nigeria is building up faster now with the amended Electoral Act 2026 and the Independent National Electoral Commission rescheduling elections for January 2027 to avoid clashing with the Ramadan period. We're talking core politics today on Political Paradigm. I am Terry Ikumi. Now, not much is often said about the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP. For some, the party didn't exist before Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, the 2023 presidential candidate of the party. But that's not true. The NNPP has been in existence since 2002. There are concerns, however, now regarding the future of the party as we go into the general elections. The exit of the only governor and some members of the legislature from the NNPP is the reason for these concerns. However, the NNPP has a strong presence in the Northwest and Northeast. Recently, the NNPP joined other opposition parties to condemn the amended Electoral Act 2026. That's where we will pick up our conversation today. I'm joined by the national chairman of the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, Dr. Ajuji Ahmed. Welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Terry. It is my pleasure to be here.
It's nice to see you. So as I said in my intro, we would start the conversation from the Electoral Act amendment. A couple of days ago, some of the opposition parties met, held a press conference, and raised some major concerns about the Electoral Act amendment, the Electoral Act 2026. And you read that statement.
Yes, I did.
At a time. I think something happened, before I even go into details of that, something happened with the People's Democratic Party chairman, which prompted him to leave the place. Could you explain what happened?
To the best of my knowledge,
Yes.
Nothing much happened. He was not even at the venue of the gathering. He was totally outside it. And at first he told us that we should give him an allowance of just about 10 minutes. Right. Later the 10 minutes became 5, and then the 5 became 1. And at the end of the day, he decided not to appear at all. So I really have no clear knowledge why he did that. But that was what
okay, because the reports we got initially said that he was supposed to read the statement, which he eventually read, but I think the opposition coalition did not recognize him because of the situation within the party and the court cases back and forth, and that was why. Is that out of place?
It's not out of place, but I cannot categorically say that that was the case because I wasn't party to his decision not to appear. But I did hear for sure what you just said, that he wanted to read the text of the press release. But he had a conflict with other major political parties that wanted a consensus, and the consensus fell on me, and I guess I did a good job. You were there.
And I guess that's why you're here as well. Now, from that briefing which you had, you raised some major concerns about the Electoral Act. And one of them is electronic transmission results in real time. If you followed the Citizens Town Hall, which held on Sunday and broadcast across major stations, including Channels Television, you probably would have heard the INEC chairman make some statements about that. One of the things he said that he promises that 2027 general election will be the best the country would ever see, or see so far, hopefully. Yeah. And then he also said that he promises, he cannot guarantee 100% perfection as far as that is concerned. But he also said that electronic transmission of results won't be an issue, but the concern is real time. So I don't know if you followed that conversation, but what are your thoughts on that?
My thought is that real transmission of results is a precondition for the opposition parties. We wanted to have it mandatory transmission of electronic result to INEC, IREF. However, INEC thought, or the legislator thought, that they would be able to accommodate a electronic transmission. However, they gave also an allowance to the fact that if they cannot transmit electronically, they should have the right or the will to transmit it manually. And that was why we disagreed completely with them. We felt that in this country at this point, with about 160 or so million telephone subscribers, with I believe over 240 or 40 something individual Nigerians who subscribe to the internet. The excuse should not even arise, especially because they made sure since the time of Mahmoud Yakubu that those transmission portals are such that they can retain the data of elections for as long as there was no availability of light or network. Whenever the network comes and wherever the light is there, the machine will now transmit it after storing it, transmit it now to the INEC-IRF. So we felt very strongly that the transmission should be electronic and should be electronic 100%.
You know, it almost sort of gives credence to what the INEC chairman also said when he gave an example of trying to make a transfer and you may be debited, but the person would not receive the money. And then it also ties in to what the presidency has said, that there must be a backup plan. I don't know if you've seen the response of the presidency, but the presidency says, you have, I believe, and the president says any reasonable Nigerian understands network glitches are real issues. So the INEC chairman on his part did not say there would be no electronic transmission. He said it may not be real time, basically because we cannot entirely trust the network, and we've seen instances with that.
We believe we can trust the network by and large because experience has shown that even if the network goes down, the machine stores the data and then retransmit it whenever the network is up to the INEC-IRF. So added to that, we believe that insisting on backup plan manually, that is where the trouble starts and ends. Wherever you have manual transmission, then it is susceptible to manipulation by officers who are entrusted to do it manually.
Let me ask you a question now, and this would speak to the curiosity of several Nigerians. Why does it appear that the ruling party is satisfied with this section 60 sub 3 and the opposition parties are not? How does this favor the ruling party?
We suspect that having a backup, as they are saying, is not actually a backup, but a booby trap. If the opposition parties were to accept it 100%, we just cannot be sure what will happen in real time when the voting comes. And the history has been that collation officers normally tilt towards those that they favor. Sometimes, literally, they even change the numbers. You can see it on the result sheet when you have something like 20, and which can easily be read as 200. So adding a zero is not a problem. But electronic voting and transmission certainly will not allow that to happen. And in addition to that, when the results are transmitted to the INEC-IRF, it is going to be very easy for political parties to now check and confirm what is there. Unlike when you have manual transmission, which we now have seen in previous elections, that become very contentious, even if you take that to the courts. Therefore, our objection is anchored on that possibility.
But is this, because my initial question was, how does this favor the ruling party and not the opposition parties? Your response also just almost suggests that the indictment is on the electoral umpire. Does this show or does this indicate a lack of trust in the electoral umpire? Because the buck stops at their table.
Yeah, it is not a matter of trust. It is a matter of confirming that everything is done well and fine and good. The ruling party, of course, accepted it because it is by and large their legislators and their president that are behind the Electoral Act entirely. And we were very apprehensive of the fact that when the legislation was passed to the president, it was literally hours before he signed it. We wondered why the haste in signing it, why not have a look at it very critically, and therefore we suspect that there is something like a collusion between the legislature and the executive. And since it is dominated by one party, there is definitely, naturally, a trust deficit.
Yeah, Dr. Ahmed, where does the electoral umpire come in here? Because when you talk about taking a picture with the beavers and then sending it, and then you say that when you get to where there's network, it would be transmitted. Shouldn't that sort of give some level of trust in the electoral umpire? Unless you say you don't trust the electoral umpire, because as it stands now, it is law. As this law exists, do you trust the electoral umpire to do the right thing with regard to transmitting these results electronically? Maybe not in real time, but when they get to where there is network, the result would be transmitted.
We are not quarreling with that, so long as the transmission remains electronic. We would always believe that if the Electoral Act makes the transmission, electronic transmission, mandatory by law, and therefore INEC will have, or any electoral officer, including collation officers, will have no other option except to transmit it electronically, in line with what you have just said. If the machines crash or network is not available, it can store the data all the same of anybody who votes and everyone who voted, and then transmit that. Cannot be in real time this time around, but at least it is transmitted by and large.
But the problem is it may not be admissible in court.
How?
Because it's not compulsory.
Yes, right now it is not
Right
compulsory.
now it's not compulsory.
We wanted it to be compulsory so that we can go to court based on that. But now we are denied that opportunity.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go to something else, which you had a problem with. During your press conference, you raised concerns around direct and consensus modes of party primaries. Yeah. Why is that so?
Because party primaries should have been left entirely to individual political parties, and that has been the practice all along. We again felt that restricting us to two methods of identifying and making recommendations and endorsing our candidates is very hard. Unless it is the ruling party, it is very, very difficult to see smaller parties having the resources to, for example, do direct primaries. Direct primaries, as you know, meant that every individual from the ward level to the local government level to the state level and going up to national convention will have to line up and cast their votes. That is tantamount to real election. And how many of the political parties will have the resources to do all this and also have enough resources for them to mount a real challenge to the ruling party in terms of resources that they will need in order to conduct these, what do you call it?
Primaries.
Primaries, that's right.
But which one outweighs the other? For example, we've heard cases where governors hijack party delegates, and I know the presidency's response to you is to address something like this, where every party member has an opportunity. And the presidency points to the United States, where that is the mode of party primaries, and says this is where we borrowed our presidential system of government from. So let's take away the hold of the governors on the delegates and have everybody participate. So when you juxtapose the resources, as you mentioned, and the fairness vis-a-vis taking away the hold of the governors from the system and imposing their own candidates, which one do you think outweighs the other?
It is not a matter of which one outweighs the other. Which one is more practicable to smaller parties? And we believe previous exercises that used the indirect method went on very well. Certainly there are governors here and there who hijack the process and ensure that their right and their own candidates becomes the right candidate, and therefore that has its own shortcomings. But the shortcomings of that cannot outweigh the shortcoming of this particular method of selecting presidential or governorship candidates. There are instances, certainly, where the governors play a certain role. But you will also remember that they are not the decisive factor. The electorate remains the decisive factor, because you know that in 2015, how many governors were lined up behind Jonathan? So many of them. I cannot exactly remember the number, but I think they shouldn't be less than 19 or 20 or 21 in the region of that number. All the same, they cannot hijack the entire process, because the electorate made up their mind that they are not voting for Jonathan. So at the end of the day, he had the majority of governors, but at the end of the day, he also lost the election.
You know, a lot of people have said, why now? You know, before now, the major concern was electronic transmission of results. But since after your press conference, there have been more. And some have said this was a process that started about 2 years or 2 years ago. How is it now that it's now been signed into law that the opposition parties are crying foul and pointing to so many issues? One of the issues you're pointing at is the timetable for elections.
Yeah.
And I think it's majorly because INEC has now given political parties, based on the law, from now till I believe May, to digitalize their register. Why do you have a problem with the scheduling of elections and the timetable?
It is too short. And as you know, even the announcement for the next general election, INEC requires by previous law about 360 days in order to do that. Right now, it is all chalked up in one place. And I will call your attention to what I said earlier in the earlier question, that smaller parties cannot cope with that kind of crash program in organizing an election. And therefore, that is the basis of our objection to that. That really is it. We wanted, or still want, that the fact that the process should be longer, so as to accommodate those of us who have very little resources in organizing ourselves to face an election, and an election that is dominated by APC, that has, going back to you, 32 so far, or 33 governors rooting for it. We needed the space to organize ourselves and ensure that we are in the right place at the right time.
What's the conclusion from the opposition parties beyond this press briefing that you had last week? Do you want to go to court on this, or are you going to get into the situation? Because I see already that the ADC and the PDP have commenced their own electronic e-registration process.
We will all comply with electronic e-registration.
Yes.
My party actually envisaged that long ago, and I think we have gone in that direction successfully, up to, I think, about 70–80%, even before this law. So it is a welcome development for us, but to other parties who have not done so even from the beginning, definitely it will be a big challenge for them to do so.
Well, speaking about your party, I'd like to know what the status of your party is. It's
our status is good.
It is coming forth in the 2023 presidential election, counted for something at the time. But if you look at it, you had about, out of 1.4 million votes that Senator Kwankwaso got, 990-something was from Kano alone, meaning from the rest of the country, you got just about 500 votes. Now, that Kano is divided between the APC and the NNPP. So speak honestly, beyond optimism, what the status of your party is at this moment.
Beyond optimism, we are going to fight the next election the way that we fought the last one. In actual fact, we are even at a greater advantage at this point and going into the next election, that is 2027, than we were when the 2023 election was held. Simply because by that time, 2023, the NNPP had not a single councillor, not a single local government chairman, not a single anything, let alone the governor. And all these were lined against us. And all the same, we scored what we did score in Kano and got the governorship seat, as well as a majority of senators in this, coming from the state, and majority of House of Representatives members, and indeed almost completely the House of Assembly members. So right now, the governor is gone, definitely. We wish him the best of luck where he has gone to. What is left for us is to go back to the drawing boards and then make sure that we learn from our experience of 2023. And given greater number of people now who are in the NNPP than when we had the 2023 election, we will make a good showing in Kano. As for the rest of the country, I think a lot of people do not know that we prepared for the 2023 elections within 1.5 years of the evolution of the party, to the setting up all structures in the country, opening all offices in all the states, and so on and so forth. Right now, we have those structures on the ground, and therefore we believe we will make a better showing in 2027 rather than 2023.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the ADC spokesman when it was here, Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi, because we've had off-season elections since the presidential election, and we haven't seen the NNPP show out as much. So the question is the NNPP only focused on the presidential election and the strength it possesses in Kano State?
I think partially I have already answered this question, in the sense that right now we have structures better than we had before.
So why have we not seen results?
As far as the off-season elections are concerned, we were a lot of the times taken off guard by coming late in our organizational capacity and not strengthening the structures in the individual states where the off-season elections took place. We believe before the governor left us in Kano, we won most of the off-season elections. When he left, I believe if there is an off-season election again, we will perform the same way. Nationally, we are making every preparation to ensure that we improve our showing than that in 2023.
Well, I'd like to know what role Senator Kwankwaso is playing for the party, because he's seen as a party leader. He is seen as many have called him the permanent presidential candidate of the party. And some of the concerns that were raised in 2023 pointed to the concerns around zoning. I don't know where your party stands on zoning, because in 2023, a lot of people expected political parties to zone to the south. And that is the reason why you had a situation with the PDP and it falling apart, at least to an extent. Where does your party stand on zoning? And what will happen in 2027 as far as zoning is concerned?
Interesting question. I will begin answering with the first part. Senator Kwankwaso definitely is an important member of the NNPP. He plays a leading role, better than anybody else, in the evolution and development of the party. The party stands grateful to him, I believe eternally, because he was the one that helped us get the party to where it is now. And therefore, there is no reason to us why he can be or should be the perennial presidential candidate of the party. We did not zone the presidency to the south because, as I told you, our time for the 2023 election was very, very short. It was therefore a very big challenge. We tested the ground, and now we will actually perform better because we have the experience. We are not closing our doors to whoever it is that wants to contest, and we are considering the appropriateness or otherwise of zoning the presidential ticket this time around also to the south. We will take that decision at the appropriate time.
So the NNPP is open to zoning to the south?
We are open to zoning. Yeah.
Fair enough. So let me ask you this question as far as Kano State is concerned. Kano is a stronghold. It's just like Abga in Anambra State.
Right.
Interestingly, it would appear to be losing that strength because of the defection of Governor Abba and the National Assembly members and State Assembly members that have left. So let me ask you, based on what Mr. Buba Galadima said, where he accused the governor of stifling opposition parties. Is that true?
Buba Galadima is entitled to his views, but there may be such stifling, but to the best of my own knowledge, I cannot pinpoint and say this is where the stifling came. There are certain allegations that some people were detained arbitrarily, judges were briefed to sentence them summarily to jail times. But at the end of the day, rule of law governs Kano, and we hope when we win Kano back again, we will emphasize and re-energize the system of rule of law in Kano.
Are members of the NNPP being oppressed by the ruling party in Kano State?
A member of the NNPP?
Are members of NNPP being oppressed by the ruling party in Kano State?
No, we are not. Our members are not oppressed because those of our members who wanted to join the defectors, we addressed them and told them, if you think this is what is best for you, please go. We have no objection at all. And therefore, if some other members feel that they are oppressed, they should report that to the National Secretariat of the party, that we are oppressed. But so far, I have not had such complaints of oppression. But that does not mean that there are no allegations of oppression of individuals who feel that they are oppressed in one way or the other.
You know, this sort of corroborates the position taken by the Kano State government in response to Mr. Galadima, where they said they completely reject the allegations.
What I said did not contradict what he said earlier on. It just reinforces, in a way, his own assertion that some members are oppressed. But if they are oppressed, I maintain my position. We should have had that oppression referred to the national headquarters of the party. But that does not mean that there is no oppression of individual members or some kind of collective side of membership of the NNPP in Kano. But by and large, we are fine. We are fine in Kano, and that is why we are optimistic that we will perform better.
Very well then. So ahead of the 2023 presidential election, there were concerns around the strength of the individual presidential candidates. At the time, the top four, President Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, and Kwankwaso. And some say that when you look at the margin of victory for President Bola Tinubu, that a coalition at the time would have prevented that.
Yeah,
fast forward to now, we're already seeing that coalition gaining grounds.
Right.
We'll see Peter Obi and Atiku sort of working together in the ADC. Kwankwaso is not in the picture. And no one is dismissing his strength, at least to an extent, because of the level of respect he commands in the north. Is the NNPP not involved in any coalition whatsoever?
We are involved in the current coalition. And if we were not involved, I would not have been the person to read the communique that at the end of the meeting last week. And I think Buba Galadima too, as Secretary of the Board of Trustees, was at that meeting. And a few others in my own National Working Committee were there. However, we made our position very clear that we are not rushing in whole and completely in joining the coalition. What will happen is going to be dictated by the realities of the political realities on the ground. We will join the coalition if the conditions are right for us and our interests are assured. We may not join the coalition if at all we believe that we can stand alone and win an election. So we have those two options, or indeed form our own coalition with other individuals and groups and produce a party that can win elections in 2027. So we have those three options.
So it's interesting because I understand the whole idea of a coalition. And I don't entirely believe that holding a press conference with other opposition political parties on a particular issue suggests a coalition for politics. It's more or less a common ground to say we don't accept something. But when we talk about a coalition, we've seen Peter Obi from the Labour Party, Atiku Abubakar from the PDP, we've seen Rotimi Amechi from the APC, we've seen Nasir El-Rufai from the APC, all come into the ADC. Yeah. We haven't seen that with Kwankwaso. Matter of fact, we haven't seen any meeting that suggests. So my question is, how open are you to a coalition? Because one of the things you've just said is, if you believe you have the strength to win an election, you will not go into a coalition. The other thing you said is, if the conditions are right, what are the conditions? And what do you believe is the strength of the NNPC going into this election, considering the depletion in Kano State, and also considering that there are big players in the ADC that want to come together and take out the APC? Where will Kwankwaso fit in that coalition, if you agree to it?
He will fit squarely in that coalition.
As a presidential candidate?
No, not necessarily. He can be. The coalition may zero in on him to be presidential candidate or somebody else, depending on the zoning of the ADC, if at all we join the ADC. Conditions are right, meaning therefore that the interests of members of the NNPP are assured to be protected, and we believe that hurrying to join the coalition in the sense that you have articulated, it does not mean that we are with the coalition or we are not with the coalition. We certainly are taking our decision very soon in the future, because we even have pressure from our supporters to make our position known, and we will make our position known in due course.
But I wonder how quickly that would be, because you're already doing e-registration for your party, and we know that there's a time restriction for mergers, except you want to go into the election and just tell your supporters, you know what, go this way.
Before the time expiration of mergers, that is when we will come up with a position. Because we know that if we don't, of course we are out of the coalition, and we have to weigh our strength going forward as a political party and not align with any other political party, you know.
Dr. Ajuju, we're talking core politics today.
Yes, we are talking
core politics. So I want to
politics.
ask you a very political question.
Okay.
When you look at the opposition as it is, and you look at President Bola Tinubu, you yourself have pointed out the number of governors that have defected to the APC, clearly showing support for the APC. Do you honestly believe that we have an opposition that can put up a strong front against the president in 2027?
Since we are facing an election, and it is an election, there is no fait accompli for any individual presidential candidate or individual party. What happens is that electors, that is the electorate, have the last say. And we will see if collecting governors, 33 or 30, whatever of them, into one political party in one basket is in the interest of even the political party that shows that strength to attract governors. Governors are not those who determine elections. They influence to an extent, but in a lot of states, you can see that the governor is there as in one party, but another party will come and win the election in the same state. There are governors who even stood elections as senators, and they lost such elections. So the strength of the governor, to me, is in numbers rather than in substantive influence when it comes to the behavior of the electorate.
When I speak about politics, I make no mistake to draw attention to the importance of the electorate. There are concerns and fears from quite a number of voters that maybe their votes won't count, and it's going to be politics as usual. But I strongly believe that the electorate must partake in this election and decide. So we won't rule out the electorate. I'm going to ask you clearly, because there are informed voters in Nigeria who know who they want to vote and why. As it stands, beyond the political strength that political parties are showing, when you look at this administration, tell us why the people will not vote President Bola Tinubu for a second term.
As I said before, collecting governors or here and there into one basket does not assure victory politically. And countrywide, we cannot sincerely say that the Tinubu administration is positive enough in achieving a lot of the aspirations of the electorate. Inflation is high up in the air. Insecurity has doubled and multiplied in a lot of parts of the country. The economy certainly is in the downward slide. Division now crops up between one side of the country and another. I'm talking about, for example, IPOP, although he inherited it, but he did not solve it. Internationally, Nigeria is at the receiving end of many countries, including the United States, for our foreign policy. The electorate is someone who weighs what his pocket can afford him when he compares that with what it afforded him before. And therefore, at the end of the day, people will now decide based on what they see. And I believe that the Tinubu administration leaves a lot to be desired as far as meeting the hopes and aspirations of the generality of Nigerians.
You know, when you talk about the economy, I know that when this administration got into power and made the strong decisions it made to take away fuel subsidy and float the naira, the president had assured that, give it time, we'll reap the benefits. And in recent times, we've seen the GDP climb, the 4.07% year-on-year increase in quarter 2025 was hammered on. What the president is saying, now we're beginning to make progress. It may be slow, but there is progress. Do you not think that within the next 1 year, there would be positives that would make this, the electorate, give the administration a second chance, considering the indices that seem to be improving?
Those indices sometimes are artificial because from the 4 points, whatever growth rate that you have cited, a lot of times if you compare that or convert that in naira, that is the naira into dollar or any other foreign currency, you find that the calculation of the GDP is more or less artificial. We hope, as Nigerians, we have the interest of the country, and therefore we wish the president good success, but that indication of that success to us is not there. Therefore, we believe his economic policies are certainly and definitely not ones that have favored the common man. And at the end of the day, it is the common man who votes for government in or out. Prices have doubled. Recently, they imported so much foodstuff into the country, and that virtually eliminated the little farmer, the small farmer, and therefore the effort in that direction has become counterproductive. If I were them, I will shut and close the doors to importation, provide the correct input to our own farmers to produce, solve the problem of insecurity across the country, and encourage people into entrepreneurial preoccupations rather than hanging on to, okay, if they import rice, that quantity rice is going to come down. If you calculate what comes down in real terms and compare it with what we have lost from our own farmers, that does not signify any progress at all.
So let me ask you, as we speak on the state of the nation, we've seen opposition leaders. We saw Amici, we saw Peter Obi join protests. We don't see Senator Kwankwaso. Doesn't seem to, as they say, lead from the front. Is there a reason for that? We also see Atiku make comments constantly on national issues. Why do we not get that from the NNPP and its leader?
You get that from NNPP. Perhaps you are saying that the leader is a little bit careful in coming so much out in forefront.
Is that what it is?
Somehow, but he has his own reasons. He has his own calculations for that reason, for that decision. And you should also understand that Senator Kwankwaso politically is a very calculating individual. And we believe, therefore, his calculations at the end of the day probably would be right. I referred you earlier on to the fact that we are not joining the coalition in a hurry. That has a reason why we are not hurrying. We also kept our own other options open, in the sense that if there are individuals who come and tell us that I want to be presidential candidate, and we weigh his weight across the country, he probably will be the one to be the presidential candidate. He did not join the protest in the National Assembly. Perhaps he was not invited, because I personally...
Invited?
Yeah.
I thought he would lead it.
Did what?
I thought he would be at the front to lead it. We saw the other opposition leaders do it. And while you say you're being careful on national issues, the same thing you're speaking against, the Electoral Act 2026, was protested against by some of these names I mentioned to you. So if you couldn't come out to protest against it with them, but you go to a press conference to speak, what does that say about the party?
If at all he did not lead, and that is what worries you.
No, it doesn't worry me. I'm asking questions.
That is your question. Then they all cannot be leaders at the same time. NNPP as a party share the spirit of the protest. Some of our members, I believe, are there, but we did not see our leader for his own reasons. I am not sure, because he divides his time between Abuja and Kano. I'm not so sure whether that coincided with those protests, because they happened within how many days? Probably 2. Therefore, it could have been that. Recently, I know he traveled a lot, and I don't know if that coincided with the time that the leaders led protests to the National Assembly. Okay. He will be here, and I'm sure you will hear from him if you ask him that question.
All right, you're from the North, and
I am.
The situation in the North is largely insecurity. I want you to assess the administration of President Bola Tinubu and speak clearly and honestly if there's been an improvement in security in the northern region.
The North has had a wrong end in the government trying to solve the security situation. In the northeast, far northeast, Boko Haram has even gained strength in Borno, Yobe.
Right now?
Right now, yeah. Borno, Yobe in particular. When you come to Katsina, there are certain groups that we have never had before that cropped up and are wreaking havoc on Katsina in particular, which we also have been seeing spilling into Kano of recent. But Katsina, Zamfara, Kebbi to an extent, definitely Niger, these are areas that have never, most of them have never witnessed the level of insecurity that we have witnessed in the last 2 years. Unfortunately, it also spilled into Kwara, as you very well know. And we have not had a situation where 200, 300 people are collected together and disappearing, or the level of mass killings that happened, I believe, in Kwara, about 200 people at the same time. If you compare that with what went on prior to now, certainly there is a deterioration of the security situation in the north generally. In Niger in particular, some spaces are even ungovernable. Also, I'm not sure whether you heard the names of those who control, so to speak, a lot of local governments in Sokoto State and Zamfara State, as well as Katsina State. So it has increased, and we are very unhappy with the fact that it is left to increase to the point that the Americans, when they said, quote and unquote, they want to help us solve the problem, all the bombs rested were dropped on the northern part of the country, particularly within Zamfara and Sokoto State, most especially Sokoto State.
But you welcome that help. There are American soldiers in the country currently helping out with the fight against insecurity. Do you welcome the president, the federal government? Why is that so?
I don't welcome that.
And why is that
Because we have the capacity to solve our problems without the Americans
But over time, it hasn't showed that we have the capacity.
Because probably we do not have, show the right political will in solving the problem. But you know, the strength of the Nigerian army that have solved problems of this nature in different countries.
But we hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And even as far back as President Goodluck Jonathan's time,
yeah,
mercenaries were employed to address security concerns. So why do you think that Nigeria has what it takes, but we don't see that translating to action and still condemn the efforts by the U.S. to support Nigeria?
Goodluck Jonathan's time witnessed mercenaries. Certainly true. And it is also the same thing to me that I'm saying right now. It was not necessary. The Nigerian army should have been equipped and provided with the right political backing in order to solve the problem, because they could solve it. Unless if there is a conspiracy at the highest level of or echelon of the Nigerian army, which I believe does not exist. It's simply a matter of not being equipped, not being trained, not being reinforced, and having a very low morale cutting across the three arms of the army. That is why, if you pick the bull hold it by the horns, you will find that we have the capacity to challenge those who think that they can make the country ungovernable by becoming bandits, by becoming kidnappers, and raising down villages after villages. I mean, can't an army, a whole army, challenge just one individual within a certain territorial border? There is no reason for that. And because there is no reason for that, and because I believe that the government is capable of equipping the army and encouraging it and providing it with the right political backing, if that does not happen, there is no way that the army can solve the problem. But definitely, the solution does not lie in either mercenaries or inviting Americans to come and solve the problem. Since they came and landed, I think, in Bauchi, I don't think you can quantify the added value that they brought. They came, they said, in order to train the Nigerian army. Training does take a lot of time for it to translate into real results. Who knows how long it is going to take, and how many lives are going to be lost in the time frame that they are going to do the training. Instead of making sure that the army itself is well equipped and well motivated to fight insurgency, we could have done it ourselves.
I'm tempted to believe that the presidency would disagree with you when you talk about the political will to fight insecurity in Nigeria. And,
of course they will disagree with you.
They would point to the actions taken by the president from changing the security architecture to welcoming the foreign help, to increasing the budget of security. They would point to all these things to say that this is an intentional president to fight insecurity. Do you think that there are actions or inactions of the president that suggest otherwise?
Well, if there is any action that is positive it should translate into reality, not in verbalization of intentions or a clear and demonstrable lack of achievement in that regard. Certainly, the summary of it all is that northern part of Nigeria has experienced greater insurgency in 2026 than what it was in 2023. And that is what people are going to judge the administration with. If I were them, I will ensure that perhaps even 90% of the budget of this country will go to solving the issue of security. Because without enough security, you cannot run an economy, you cannot educate people, you cannot create jobs, you cannot provide infrastructure, and therefore the security is the backbone of every indices of development, which should have been addressed and which, unfortunately to me, he might have increased the budget, but he did not increase the security itself.
Very well done. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to talk to you about the political class. Many say they are the problem of this country. And that's why you find that every time there's an issue, you find the citizens trying to petition the international community to place restrictions and bans on the political class. When you look at Nigeria's politics, what gives you concern?
As far as the political class is concerned, the concern really is a matter of having the right people in politics. I am not in politics as a professional. I have been a technocrat all my life. But if you leave politics to those who should not be in politics in the first place, you get the result that you are getting right now. I wish there were universities that train politicians to be good politicians and administrators. But here is a situation where anybody can jump into politics to make laws for the country, to govern the country, and so on. I know in the National Assembly somebody who was operating a keke napep, and at the end of the day, because he was there in the right place and aligned himself with the right party, he won the election. Tell me what such a person can contribute to legislation when it comes to his role in contributing. And therefore, I think
that he was educated, but they didn't have the opportunity. So operating the keke napep could be a way of survival.
It could be a way of survival. It could also not be a way of survival, but not a necessity, but simply a way of survival for a person who is not educated enough and who did not have the capacity and opportunity to go beyond operating a keke napep. I have not seen his certificates or I have not known his background.
So you already condemn his victory?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because he rides a keke, a tricycle.
He rides a keke, and that indicates to you the kind of qualification that he has.
There are a lot of educated Nigerians.
If he had a PhD,
there are people with masters who are doing, taxi business as well. You think they're not qualified because they are at that level?
Do you know if I also did taxi business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because you don't think that a person who rides a tricycle, like a keke napep, as we put it in Nigerian language, is qualified to be in the National Assembly.
That is just one example that I have given. There are a lot of others who I know did not have any certification whatsoever. And they are in politics and in their high political roles without being prepared for such roles. That was why I said initially that I wish there is a political school or university where we gauge, first of all, the political enlightenment and potential contribution.
Is that the problem? Because ordinarily, one would think that the problem is impunity. I don't think that's taught in school. I think that's law, and if it's enforced, people will act right. Isn't that it?
That is also a very important side of the equation. But in some countries, you know that because the citizenry is well educated, if they pass new laws, the laws are by and large voluntarily obeyed by their citizens without anybody forcing them to do so. There is high rate of impunity, certainly, in both the citizens of the country as well as the political class that govern them. So a new culture should be imbibed into Nigerians to ensure that they are patriotic, they are there to sacrifice their own interests and act in the interest of the country and its people. I wish that will happen easily, but it is going to be a Herculean task. Not that it's not going to be achievable, but if there is political will to change everything, everything can be changed, including the level of corruption that we have in the public service of the country.
Dr. Ajuji Ahmed, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on Political Paradigm. And we will keep our eyes on the NNPP to see what coalition or merger will happen.
Or running alone could have. It is my pleasure also to be here, and I hope to be here again as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much. Well, that's all the time we have on Political Paradigm. I've been speaking with the national chairman of the New Nigeria People's Party, Dr. Ajuji Ahmed. If you'd like to catch this conversation again, please go to YouTube and search Political Paradigm, or simply go to channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.